Hello everyone and welcome in this new recording. Today I will be trying to give an overview on the latest small article that I wrote concerning a project that I have, which is the HomeCtrl project. I think I mentioned that already in some previous videos. And yes, actually the previous one was about the HomeCtrl implementation with Kiwi. And I had a lot of trouble with that, so now I would like to get back a little bit to the WebAssembly implementation that I had in mind from the beginning. So let's just try to dive into this right now, and yeah, we'll see where we go with that. So, as I said, I was not really satisfied with the Kiwi implementation. Was basically just not working for me. Even if I think at some point I'm going to give this another try, because there are a few options that I have not investigated. Like, for instance, trying to use a very old version of Kiwi, maybe version 1.0 something. I don't know. Maybe that could make a difference. Anyway, that's not the topic. So for WASM, I've already done some experiment, and I was already starting with an existing implementation for this project. I think I don't know if I already have already shown that somewhere, but anyway, the current version that we have. Let me try to start out. It's MVP view. That's the desktop version. So it's built with Qt6, and we have a couple of tabs like that, and it's reporting temperature sensor value that I'm reading from my home, and from a couple of raspberries actually. We have one raspberry per yeah location in home. This is at the swimming pool, and that's inside the home. Anyway, this is the desktop version of it, and we can now also use the web version. So this is what it will look like when I try to run that from a local server. Yeah, before I got to this point, I think I had some troubles, but I don't know what this was about. Yes, I was mainly working with the desktop version first, and then when I was trying to restore the web assembly version, I've noticed that I had this error with mix active content, because initially I was just trying to access servers, the Raspberry servers with those HTTP requests, but the page itself is served with SSL. So this is what is considered a mix content, and you are not really allowed to do that to access HTTP stuff when your main page is on SSL. And we have to use SSL anyway if you want to support WebAssembly, so no much choice with that. I had to update the servers, so mix content, as I said. And the idea then was to try to use my main server, which is nerftech.org, and this one is providing SSL access. So I was just then using a reverse proxy to forward that to the actual location where I have the content. So for the HomeCtrl, we have this one. For the swim control, it's the other one. What else? After that, you just need to restart, of course, and I was then updating my configuration to request using that. Actually, I didn't put that in the HomeCtrl. It's in nerftech.org itself. I was rather using the subdomain API.nerftech. So this is in the definition of the API nerftech.org server. And yes, so just updating the configuration file. So that's some standard configuration that I'm using here. So that's for me in dist view config. That's here. I'm now using the domain name to access the server and confirming that it's working on desktop first, and then I was trying to run that again from the WebAssembly implementation. Still not working this time because of calls headers. What is calls again? Control. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's just access. No, it's not access control. What does it mean? Calls, request. Blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I don't remember. But that's the thing. You need to have the server and your browser communicating together, and the browser is going to tell the server, okay, I am requesting data from this server name, and on the other side you have to confirm that, yeah, that's one of the server names that I can accept, and so I can reply to you with some content or something like that. I'm not quite fully aware of that, but anyway, I didn't spend too much time on that, and I just decided to use a wildcard for now. This could be restricted a bit further now that I have everything on Rails, but at first it was a good solution to try to move forward. And yes, after that I could finally get the WebAssembly version to work again. It was working before because I was not making any kind of request, but now that I'm updating everything and actually making get and even post request, yeah, this blocks the system. And unfortunately, this was not yet really fully working yet, because this was okay for the get request, but not for the post request. Post request is what I'm using when I have to send an action request here when I click one of those buttons. So this is sending a post request, as I said, but you need some special consideration to allow that, because otherwise you still get those cause access error. Not absolutely sure this was it in the end, but that was the path of thinking I had at this point anyway. And I found this page, so where you have some indication, so you need to specify that the allowed methods are get and post. In fact, the page itself is describing a bit more than that. It's actually suggesting all this. Yes, all the stuff here. But I thought, okay, what the hell, maybe I don't need all of that, so let's start simple, and I tried with just get and post, but that was still not working, because in fact, if you search then in your network tab when running your application, you will see that it's indeed making an option request at first, or yeah, before the post request, I believe. So you need to support options also, and I'm not really sure that you need this line or this one actually, but at this point I thought, let's put everything together. And with that, yeah, well, still not working anyway. And I thought then I could try to change this same origin policy, because this is defining the server where I'm providing the server-side content. So as a reminder, I'm using a simple Python server implementation for the testing part here. And yeah, the message mentioned something like the same origin policy doesn't allow to access the resource, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I try to get rid of this same origin policy, but if you actually try to remove that, everything is collapsing. It's not working anymore, because you are breaking the WASM support and you don't get the shared array buffer support in your browser, so you really need this one apparently. Anyway, yeah, then I realized that I had something incorrectly implemented because I had implemented a custom response handler in my C++ request management system. So I have a request manager, and this request manager here is able to send now also post request, but first only get request asynchronously, and you are going to handle the response that you get with a custom handler. And this method is a bit more intelligent than a simple get request, because it can support retrying the request if there is any failure, or if your response code doesn't match what you would expect, or stuff like that, or if there's a timeout or stuff like that. So you actually need a more advanced response handler at this point. Yeah, no, let's go. No, not here. This is a template version to provide a lambda. Okay, the real one is this one, and this one is going to create the custom response handler and start with the first request, and if it's failing, it's going to continue with another one, and so on until it's successful. But initially, this custom response handler, yeah, I was only doing get request here, this part, so I had not updated with this part when I introduced the support for post request. And so this means that the first request I was making was post request, but then if there was something failing, it would continue with get request. So this confused me a little bit for a while, but eventually I figured this out and fixed this part. And yeah, then I could see in the log on the server side, I mean the Raspberry server side, that I was making multiple post requests one after another, but all of them were still failing. So not good. Then yeah, I started to, I was a bit lost at that point, but then I had the idea of looking into the network tab again when I was loading the application in Firefox, and when I was trying to get something like that, the error with that. But then if you were trying to look at the response, you would see that the content term was the content type was not set, and you could see that also in the header part. And what did I do about that? Yeah, at the same time, it was still a bit tricky because the error message was still this calls missing. And it turned out that it was, I think, a bit because I'm doing a proxy pass here. So I really have to provide the access control allow origin wildcard here. But then on the server here, which is going to respond, I also had to specify that. And if I specify both of them, then the response that we get will contain twice this entry twice. So it would also not work, because then the browser would complain that the header is specified twice, so it's not good for him, and you should only provide that once. So what I'm doing here is actually specifying this access controller origin here, and then I'm basically forwarding that to the proxy server. And then you have to change this. Wait a minute. Now here, I'm not really specifying it directly. It's only in the case of the option, and when you have option, you're returning immediately. So you first get here from the proxy server the first value for this. Then you I have to add it again, and I think it's the always here which is going to override the existing one. If you don't specify always, you get twice the header, and that's not good. So it was a bit tricky to set this up, but eventually, yeah, I could first get rid of the calls missing error, but then there was still this problem of attempt to load this media type, which is incorrect. But in fact, it was producing something corrupted in the data because I didn't realize that first. But when I'm making a request with fetch, so when you're using unscripted, the layer that you use to make network requests is fetch, and so when you're doing that, you have this requirement that if you provide request data, the pointer should remain valid, and it was not really the case for me. I was using a simple string and yeah, sending the pointer of the string and the size of the string, but then the request is an asynchronous process, so you would get out of your function, lose your string, corrupt your data, boom. So yes, I had to update the process a little bit to keep track of those string data, and then when I'm done with the fetch operation, I would get rid of the corresponding string data, which is something I missed at first, but I made a correction for that. So let's just maybe have a look at this part. So if you go in the request implementation, I think I have the post. I think everything is visible here because this is the unscripted bot. But anyway, we can still navigate a bit on this. So this is what I meant. You prepare a request description, which is this ADDR. What is that actually? Fetch ADDR init. So you set whatever you want to set in there, and then yes, I already had to keep track of the callback or the ender if you want that. You want to call when the request is completed. So I also had to add here the request data map, so keeping track of this JSON data, and then you would use this pointer to assign your data. Then you perform your request, which will eventually lead you to the download success or download failed. And if we have a look at this one, it's going to retrieve a request ID from the fetch object itself. And with this ID, you can retrieve the callback that you want to execute with that. On response at the callback, okay? And then you can remove this callback and also get rid of the data, the JSON data that you're providing to the request in case it was a post request. If it's a GET request, there will be no such data. But yeah, okay, with this part fixed, I could finally get those post requests working. So it means that I could click on the buttons from the interface here and trigger the activation of such and such valve or pump. And yeah, so that's good. What else do we have in there? Yes, then I decided to try to move forward with storing the credentials that I need to access this interface. Actually, for the GET request, there's no credential needed. Maybe I could add that also. But for the POST request, at least, we need an authentication, a user authentication to avoid everyone accessing my devices and opening the gate at home and things like that. So the idea was to store everything in the it's called index DB, on the browser side. So in Unscripted, we have this IDBFS, IDB file system if you want, and with when you use that, you can pretend that you have a virtual file system, and you can mount this file system, and it will try to save the file data that you write in this file system into an IndexedDB on the browser side, or actually load this data when you start the application. But first, yeah, I was preparing a small dialogue like this one, trying to get a username and a password. Then I was trying to say that to a file. Yeah, was pretty tricky at first because I could not get this to be saved. Actually, at the very beginning, I was not even trying to use this IndexedDB file system. I thought it would automatically work, but it's not the case, because by default, when you load an Unscripted application, it's going to set up a memfs, so memory fs. So it's going to build a virtual file system, but everything will only be stored in memory, which means that if you write anything to this file system, it will be lost when you refresh your page or you close the page completely and come back later. So you need to explicitly request the initialization of a IDBFS FS mounting point. So to do that, you use this kind of code here. So you prepare the IDBFS entry point here, and you have to do this synchronization. When you specify true here, it actually means that you're going to take the content of the browser IndexedDB package or blob, whatever, and you're going to load this data into your virtual file system for your application. Thing is, this operation is asynchronous. Keep this in mind. So I was trying to build the application with that, but you actually need to also link to IDBFS now. Before it, I think it was included directly in Unscripted, but now you need to specify that manually. So I have updated my configuration, my CMake macro here to set up the link flags on the application that I want to build. And yeah, I was getting a bit angry here. Was really lost, I guess. And I have to deal with the synchronization of self-calling. Yes, the thing is, it's when you save a file. What's this done again? It's here. I think it's server panel. Save file. I think I have a right file myself. No, not here. No, it's not. It's not a server panel. It's on main. Yes, because that's where I'm saving the credentials. So when you're saving your file here, I was trying to write this state YAML file. You actually have to call this function again if you want this to be persisted into the IndexedDB of the browser. Otherwise, it's still just, this file is still just in your virtual file system for Unscripted, so it's not really in the IndexedDB part yet. So you need to call that, and this time you don't provide the true value here. It means you're going to copy what you have in your Unscripted file system into the IndexedDB. So I was missing this part, but even with that, that was still not working, because the next time I would start the application, it would still tell me, no, there's no such state YAML file. And I took a pretty long time to figure out what was going wrong in there. I even found that, yeah, in Firefox, you can go on the storage tab here and find exactly what is actually already saved in your IndexedDB. And I had this file properly saved, but whenever I was starting the application, it was still telling me, no, there's no such file. And so, yeah, what was I doing here? I was trying to load the file directly, not even checking if it was existing, but that didn't work. Then I tried to add more debugger information. I thought maybe there was an error that I was missing here when I was trying to do the initial synchronization. I also removed the true because I was not sure if this was really used for populating or synchronizing in the opposite direction. So yeah, I tried a few different things, still not working, but when I got this message, I finally started to think, okay, maybe I have an idea. And indeed, the thing is, as I said, this function is asynchronous, and I was requesting this mounting operation at the start of the application, but just after that I was already requesting, okay, now you should load the state file if it exists. If it doesn't exist, then you report a message like yeah, file not found. And I was always getting this file not found message, simply because when I was doing that, the synchronization operation here was not completed yet. So I got this, I was trying to load the file, so I was getting an error, but after that I would get this those messages that yeah, there was no error. So to fix this, I took the easiest solution, easiest path I could think about. I simply stopped trying to load the state file at the very beginning when I start the application. Instead, now I'm rather trying to load this just before I need the credentials, which is only going to happen when I send a post request here. So we have a post async command somewhere. So here, this is where I'm trying to handle the click on one of those action buttons. And before I can send a post request, I need this authorization string, which is stored in the state. So this is how I would do it now. Load state data, and it's in this function that I would try to find if the file already exists, and otherwise I report the error message. But this time it's not going to happen just after the initialization of the application, so you would have some time to mount your IDBFS entry point, mount point, and so you will avoid this error and your state file will be found. So yeah, spend some time on that. What else? This is it, I guess, because after that there was only this cleaning point where, as I said, when you keep a reference on the JSON data that you use for a request, when you're done with the request, you definitely want to remove this this entry from your data map, because otherwise your data map will just keep growing for every request that you make. And this is it. So this is not completed yet, but I have made another article on the following part, so we'll keep talking about that later. But in the end, it's starting to work pretty nicely, so that's cool. Anyway, thanks for watching so far, and if you have any question or any request or anything to mention about that, just let me know. Otherwise, have a nice day and see you next time. Bye bye.